Warning. Listening to this show may result in increased levels of inspiration, motivation, and innovation. Side effects can include the immediate urge to take massive action to build a better business and life for yourself and others. You've been warned. Welcome to Influencers Radio with your host, Jack Mize.
And welcome to another edition of Influencers Radio. One of the sad, I think it really is sad. One of the sad realities in our society is that books are still, this is the sad part, but books are still considered, the one of the top ways that people are recognized as experts. Whether, technology comes and goes and different methods of information flow, but there's something that is still sacred about a book. There's something that a book represents that really marks and separates someone from the rest of the pack, whether it's whatever industry they're in or even in the arts, sciences. Having a book really does distinguish you. But we're also in a society where, a lot of times people write 200-page books, but it's getting to where fewer and fewer people read 200-page books. And I have to say that I'm guilty of this as well. If you think about your bookshelf, think about all the books that you may have on your bookshelf, and then kind of walk through them and figure out how many of them you've actually gone through and read past the first chapter. Now, some of you are voracious readers and you say, I read every single one of them, but I bet you're the exception there. And I'm a big fan of writing a book for business. I think it is tremendously profitable and effective. But my guest today has really got it down to a science of going beyond just writing a book and having a book, but very purposefully using that book to make sales, using that book to actually convert into real customers, real clients for the people that put in the near-term effort to do it, to get really long-term results from this. So today, my guest is Alex Goldstein. He is the author of Publish to Sell: Long-Term Income from Short-Term Effort. Now, the background, not necessarily the literary background, but Alex actually built a top real estate business at an incredible speed during one of the most competitive times, the most competitive markets in the U.S. And his success, he attributes directly from publishing books that built up his high-value client base. And now what Alex does is he helps business owners, entrepreneurs grow their businesses, and really beyond to improve their lifestyles. And not just in real estate. He's helped people in industries, law, financial services, consulting, marketing, coaching to take this same, the same principles and the way he did it to quickly do it for themselves in their business with their book. Alex, welcome to Influencers Radio.
Thank you, Jack. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to your audience, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Well, I want to get right into the point that your background, you didn't grow up wanting to be the great author. You didn't have dreams of being the next Tennessee Williams or anything like that, right?
Well, I did, but I also dreamt of being an astronaut and Batman. So,
well, there you go.
Take it with a grain of salt.
All right. So you're like just about every other kid running around.
Exactly. I had my moment of wanting to be just about everything. But yes, I was not trained, with a desire to be a literary great, and I didn't have any particular background in writing. So the first book that I wrote to build my business was just a few years ago, and that was many, many years after college. Yeah, and a lot of people it's something that they think that, boy, wouldn't it be nice, but they just don't think it's in them. They think it's far beyond their reach. But one of the things that you did when you first wrote a book, and like a lot of people, it wasn't something that you set out to be, I'm going to build this empire based on a book. It's kind of like a lot of folks, you kind of painted the bullseye around an arrow afterwards.
And you have a great story that you actually kick off in your book, Published to Sell, which is how I made $70,000 by accident. So let's start right there. How did you make $70,000 by accident?
Well, when I first got into the real estate agency business, I had been an investor and a developer before that, and I'd really gotten, just crushed in the down cycle. So I was starting from scratch, and I didn't have a lot of money to spend on marketing methods, and I was trying pretty much anything that I could do that I could afford to do on, a bare bones budget, I would try. And one of the things that I had done was I had written a book that was designed to appeal to people who are looking to buy a home, but were shut out of the financing system because they couldn't qualify for a loan for whatever reason. So many people had short sales and foreclosures. So I had written an ebook on this subject, and I was distributing it just via an ad I'd put on Craigslist. And so it was, free ad, wrote the ebook, paid somebody to put it into a PDF. So this is, just real bare bones. And I got shut down on Craigslist because I guess I was, posting too often or whatever. So there was less than 200 copies of this ebook had ever been distributed. And I just sort of quit in frustration and figured, all right, I'll go on to the next thing. And it was a couple of years later, I was reviewing my transactions for that year in the real estate business, and I was looking at where each transaction originated, and I saw that $70,000 in the transactions I had done were from this ebook that I had written 2 years prior, had virtually forgotten about, had done nothing to promote. And I was just flabbergasted that there was so much money coming from it. And I realized, whoa, there's something to this, and I need to be paying a lot more attention to it than I was. And so that was really the beginning of how this started.
Now, a lot of people think, well, I see a lot of people that put out, free reports and things like that. And it's, a lot of times it's like a 2 or 3 page, condensed sales letter, not even very well disguised. But it sounds like the book that you wrote really was educated the people on a very real problem that they had around the financing, because that was during a time when there was just incredible problems with financing. And, I'm real big on people being, the educator and the advocate for their customers. And that's where they're going to be, see themselves. People are going to see them as an authority or expert in what they do. What do you think that the people that are reading this saw as Alex is educating me on a solution to this problem that maybe I thought, couldn't be overcome, and he's saying there is a way to be overcome? Do you think that that's a big reason that you can directly, attribute to actually connect the dots from the book to those commissions? Absolutely. No, I mean, there was no mystery about it. It was people calling up and saying, hey, I read the book and, you're my guy. That's really, as simple as it was. Now, when you write a book, I think that one of the things that trips up a lot of authors is they get worried about maybe giving away too much information and thinking, oh, if I reveal all the secrets, then, that person won't need to hire me because they can just go do it on their own. And, the attitude that I take is that you always deliver the value in the book. And yes, there will be people who can go and do it on their own. But the truth is that those people wouldn't have been great clients anyway. So if you had revealed less information, it's not like the guy who was going to run off and do it himself would say, oh, no, I only have half the formula. Now I have to work with you and I'm going to be a great client, right? It's just not the way it works. So you want to start by delivering a great deal of value, and some portion of those readers will connect with you and bond and be great clients. And you don't need a lot of them to make a lot of money. Well, yeah, and that's where I think one of the keys to your book and the whole strategy and the principles kicks in is that I work with a lot of folks that are writing books and putting books together, and one of the biggest misconceptions that people have is that, in order to make money from a book, you have to sell a lot of books, right? They're thinking in the traditional terms of royalties, and they're thinking, Stephen King, makes a lot of money selling books, and that's the only way that they're going to get a return. And then they just see these obstacles stacking up about, I don't know if I'll make enough money back from selling my books in order to recoup that. But one of the things I love about the strategies that you use is it doesn't really matter. The books you sell is really incidental to what you're getting out there. In fact, you give them the way, but the real power in publishing a book is in almost the positioning and your ability to educate the right people, not necessarily get it out to the masses, but get it out to the people that will actually convert into customers. So kind of talk about that misconception and the power of focusing on getting the book into the right hands versus as many hands as possible.
Sure. Well, there's a great analogy that one of my mentors gives. Kevin Nations is a mentor of mine, and he talks about how, there are a lot of people who they go out and market in a way where they just think that if their message isn't working, it's because they don't have enough people that they're getting in front of. And it's kind of like, if you're rude and obnoxious and you go out to a bar and try to pick somebody up, and you're not successful. And so then you decide, there's just not enough people in this bar. So you continue to be rude and obnoxious and you go to a big club, and then that doesn't work and you go to an even bigger club. And so it doesn't matter whether there's 10,000 people, or 100 people. It's, is your message the right message? And are you connecting and bonding and delivering value? So that's the way I look at it. You don't have to have distribution in the millions in order to get a huge amount of revenue. Because if you're selling high value products and services, if you look at the lifetime value of a customer in your business, there can be, just a couple of customers in the case of a real estate business can deliver a huge return on investment. And remembering the fact that the beauty of a book is that unlike a Facebook campaign or something that just has a very limited shelf life, your book can continue to be valuable and to create relationships for you for years to come. There's no reason that you can't write a book that can be valuable in a decade from now. And so if you look at all of the customers that you can bring in, the lifetime value of that over the course of a decade, the returns are so astronomical that it becomes almost difficult to understand why anybody would choose to not produce a book to build their business.
Right. And particularly in the real estate business, and we'll talk about, the types of industries that this works well for in just a bit, but it seems like one customer, one new client from that would pay for whatever you invested in probably both time and money into putting your book together. And then after that, it's all, a free ride. And you talk about for 10 years and beyond because of the life of those books. Would you say that that's probably the case for a lot of the type of the businesses that this would work for, is that one new client that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise makes, the time and the effort and the money that you put into that book, well worth it and beyond?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, any high value products and services, it's pretty easy to make the numbers pencil out. I mean, in the case of a real estate agent, in the market that I'm in, the average commission is about $45,000. And if you look at repeat business from one customer and then referrals, you start to see how you can easily get over $100,000 in value. And so, when you look at it in that context and think to yourself, do you really think that if you write an authoritative book and virtually none of your competitors have done that you're not going to get, at least a handful of these really high value clients? And that's really the most important distinction, is that we're not just trying to get any old people here. We're trying to really get the best people to bring into your business. It's what I call pie clients. They're profitable implementers. And it's what I had noticed in my business was that the people that I enjoyed dealing with the most were people that really did two things. One, they were profitable for my business, so I could focus on them. I could give them lots of time and attention because they were generating a lot of profit. And then they also implemented the advice that I gave them. They respected what I was telling them, and they got great results because they actually implemented what I gave them. And so from my perspective, the objective for me in my business is to bring in as many pie clients as possible. And I don't know a better way to do that than through a book.
Well, you brought up a big point on the types of clients that you are, I guess, for lack of a better word, targeting with this book. And it, made me think of another obstacle, or another misconception rather, that people have, that they think the benchmark for success of their book is when someone purchases it and reads it. And they think that success doesn't really come until those two things happen. But I know, and I know because you actually talk about this in Publish to Sell, is that you can sell to people who have never read your book. So kind of bust through that myth of the fact that people have to actually have purchased and read your book in order for it to be successful in procuring these types of clients. How can you sell to people that haven't even read your book? Well, the easiest way to have your book making sales for you is by changing the way that you introduce yourself. So it's really relevant example in real estate, because virtually everybody knows tons of real estate agents, and they're really perceived as a commodity by the average person. Like there's not a lot of distinction, and people don't really know how to tell them apart. So when you walk into a room and you've never met people and they ask you what you do and you say you're a real estate agent, kind of goes in one ear and out the other. It's like, oh, real estate agent, another one of those, right? It's not very interesting. But if you introduce yourself as an author, the next question is going to be, oh, really? What's your book about? That's an interesting subject that people want to know about. And if you then say that your book is about real estate, it allows you to have a conversation with that person. And that works in a number of other professions. And I have clients that are consultants and lawyers. They're in marketing, consulting. I mean, no matter what the industry is, if you just make that one tweak and start introducing yourself as an author, it allows you to have conversations that lead to relationships, and those relationships lead to sales and referrals. Yeah, and to me, when I read that, I thought, wow, that really is what a huge distinction between I'm a real estate agent to I'm an author, and I'm sure it changes the way that the response that you get out of that. So I thought that was really a tremendous tip right there that busts through that obstacle, because it's not really about how many people read your book. It's about how many people know that you are a published author. That really changes their perception. And oftentimes that makes people want to go out and get the book and find out more about what it is that you're doing. Now, one of the big I guess value propositions that makes a book worthwhile and really creates that profit potential is the fact that it's in the title, Publish to Sell. The purpose of your book is very, very laser focused on converting a person that knows about your book, reads your book, has your book into a customer, into a client. And there's one thing on there that is very, very, that I think a lot of people leave off, or, when they're looking at trying to write a book and the purpose of writing a book, and you call it the most important page. And it's generally something that a lot of people neglect or completely ignore. And even I didn't think about how important this one page is, to making that success. Talk about what that most important page is in a book.
The most important page in the book is the offer that you make to your reader. That offer is something where you're delivering value to them and creating an opportunity for them to connect with you. So I call it the most important page in the book, because if you write the book and you omit that, then you have left out the opportunity for somebody who may have read this book and thought, wow, what a great individual this is who wrote this book. I'd love to connect with them, but they don't really have an easy or accessible way to do that. You've missed a huge potential opportunity there. So
You're essentially avoiding and making them work to find out how to get a hold of you, right? I mean, because that seems what a lot of people do is they write this great book, then they're afraid or they think it's too salesy or something. But clearly the one of the byproducts of this book is people are like, wow, this is someone I need to work with. And what you're doing is just making it easy for that person that really wants to work with you, to be able to find you. And so what are the elements of this offer? And, people may think, oh, is it a big sales pitch or is it, something that's kind of, I'm not going to be comfortable with?
Sure.
Well,
I guess, one of the things that's really important to understand is the way that I have created the process for writing a book in the publish to sell method is that I want a book that's going to be valuable for 10 years. Okay. Like I want to be able to write something and know that it's still going to add a lot of value to somebody who reads it for a decade. So in doing that, that also means that I have to leave out information that is likely to go stale pretty quickly. So if I'm dealing with specific information about technology or tactics or things like that, I can't get too specific because then the book is going to become dated really quickly. So what I've done there is I've created this opportunity for myself where I say, I'm giving you information that's timeless here, but if you want the timely current recommendations for tools, resources, anything that's related to this book, then I want you to take me up on this free offer. It's going to give you that information. So for example, in Publish to Sell, one of the things that somebody is very likely to want information on is how can they outsource the process of their book, of getting covers, of doing design and layout and things like that. Now, if I had put really specific information into Publish to Sell on that, then I'd have to be updating the book probably, every 6 months because the world just keeps changing and the tools and the tactics change. But by keeping it separate, I've now created this opportunity where I'm making an offer and I say, I'm going to give you a free outsourcing guide. And that free outsourcing guide, it adds value for the reader, and it also has a real purpose for being there because we've separated all that temporal information. And then in a year from now, I can keep updating the outsourcing guide and people can keep getting that current information. And so that's the way that I present it. If you're going to create an offer for your reader, make it make sense, make it add value. And you don't have to worry about being salesy because there's a natural fit there.
Yeah, and it really is an opportunity. I've always thought that, with these types of books, tell them kind of be very, very clear and giving with information on, what they should do, why they should do it. But that tactical how to do, just from a practical purpose, needs to be outside the book, or just like you said, you will be updating it over and over and over. How many editions you're going to have of that book, if you get that tactical about it. So, and you're right. It does serve multiple purposes there you're giving people what they want and added value information. And clearly the people that go the step to get that probably have just qualified themselves or identified themselves also as someone that potentially, is going to be a good client for you, I would guess.
Absolutely. And, the overall, the guiding principle that I give to people is that somebody who reads your book and implements the advice should be receiving value at least 1,000 times of what they paid for the book. And I believe that the offers that you make and that time-sensitive information is part of that value proposition.
Yeah. Well, and that's, I think, a very important point is that your book, even though it's published to sell, it's not about publishing a sales letter. It's not about publishing an advertisement, that you are putting quality information. You're putting actionable information in the book that they really can use, and the value is truly there. Otherwise, it's probably going to have an opposite effect of what you probably thought it would if you try to turn it into a sales piece. And so that kind of leads to my next question, which I think is probably one of the biggest obstacles people have. If they say, all right, you know what, Alex, I'm in. I believe that this truly is a way that I can, build a high value client list. But where would I begin in writing and publishing a book. What do you think is the biggest obstacle, that biggest thing that stands in front of people that keeps them from at least getting that traction or that momentum going to actually see a book getting completed?
Well, I believe the biggest obstacle to people writing, I think the whole existence of writer's block really comes from people sitting down to write before they really know what they want to say. And so the biggest, or I should say the most common misunderstanding that I see is people just have this vision of themselves sitting down in front of Microsoft Word with a blank page and just typing away, and now they're going to get all this, information together. So, the reality is that writer's block hits because you don't really know what it is you're going to say. And so we start the process by a structured method of brainstorming where you're just answering lots of questions about your customer, about your business, about what you want to accomplish. And anybody can answer these questions. And once you have gone through this process, which is very structured and detailed, you now have a lot more to say. And from that point, it becomes much easier to write, because instead of you thinking, oh, what am I going to write about? It kind of becomes the opposite. We have so many things to say that now your real challenge is focusing on what you're going to say next and how you're going to say it, which is a much better problem to have.
Oh, yeah. One that people don't see, but I guess they quickly hit as they go through the process. So let's think about this. I said in the beginning that we've come to an age where people write, 200-300 page books. Very few people read 200-300 page books. What is the sweet spot with one of these books that is, to follow the publish to sell model, to have that purpose of converting people into high value clients, to draw them in? What is generally the volume, the length of one of these books?
Well, one of the trends that I've seen lately in publishing is people just wanting to be able to say they're an author so much that they do the minimum that they can possibly imagine in order to do that. And they produce a pamphlet or something like that and put it on Kindle and say, now I'm an author. I think that starting somewhere is great, but to really get the credibility of being an author, it just helps to be able to produce a book that is a real statement of what you want. And so I tell people to target around 150 pages because I think it's substantial enough that you can say a lot, but it's not too much of a burden for people to read, particularly if it's well organized. And if you've really done your homework on the brainstorming phase, it should be something that people can scan and pick and choose the chapters that are relevant to them if they don't have the time to read the whole thing. But it is really important to make a complete book that really adds some value. And it's kind of like, I guess the old programmer's stage saying of garbage in, garbage out. If you don't really put the effort in and you don't really produce a book of value, it's going to be hard to bond with the really high value clients. There's not going to be a relationship created there. The other thing too is that there are other benefits of going through this process besides the sales, and the sales is the number one reason, but there's a couple other things that are important. One is that people get much greater clarity on their own business and their own business strategy. So you should be running your business much more effectively after you've gone through this process than when you started. And that can be hugely valuable. Another thing is that people oftentimes don't really explain the vision of their business to their employees and their vendors. Who has the time for that? Well, now you can give them a book. So somebody that you hire who may be halfway around the world, or a vendor you work with, you can give them the book. And if they read it, they're going to understand a lot more about how your business works and how they can serve you. So those benefits are really powerful, and you don't get them if you don't produce a book of substance.
And I think Publish to Sell, your book is almost a perfect example. If, anyone wants to say, oh, well, I wish I could see an example of this, or I'd like to see this in action. And that's one of the things, I really like about Publish to Sell is you've produced something that is an example of what you're talking about in action, in doing it, that all the elements that you talk about are actually part of, the experience that they get when they read the book, which I think is, extremely valuable and powerful. Let's talk about the types of businesses can benefit, because there's people that I'm sure are thinking, well, will this work for my business? Will, being an author or creating a book around what I do, is it going to benefit me? Who is it that you've kind of identified that really can benefit from going through this exercise?
Sure. Well, it's a great question. And I think the short answer is that anyone where you're in an industry where your customers value expertise and where they're having trouble making decisions and sorting out who are the good guys from the bad guys. I mean, in general, that's where you're going to get the most value from a book. More specifically, the people that I advocate getting into this immediately are people that sell high value services and high value products where there's a great deal of expertise involved in that process. Because the higher the value of what you're selling, or the higher the value of a lifetime customer, the more they can get from this process of bonding with you and reading a book. And the higher the value of something, the more likely somebody is to actually read a book and try to understand it. So if you're looking at, somebody who wants to choose an attorney for their business, or who wants to, purchase real estate for investment, or if they wanted to buy a multi-million-dollar home or choose a financial advisor, these are the kinds of decisions where the average person really wants information and they want to know that they're with an expert who really gets them. And creating that type of relationship through a book is very powerful and effective.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I guess a lot of people, I always say that you know more than you think you know. And there's a lot of people that think, well, do I really have a book in me? And I know going through the process, most people do have a book in them. They have something of value, some way that they do things that even though it may be second nature to them, or they've done it so much that it doesn't seem like a big deal, that it can be a very big deal to the people that they're able to help. And I think that's where that high end service is, how it all wraps around to what we were talking about at the beginning, is by putting that knowledge out there and delivering it very purposefully to those higher value type clients, the people that will see that and recognize the value and decide that, this is someone that I need to work with. And because you're not talking about these kind of sexy industries that you see a lot of people out there that are writing books. We're talking about, like we talked at the beginning, legal, financial services, consulting. It's things that anyone from a national company to someone that has a local that just serves their local geographic area can benefit from, right?
Absolutely. I mean, look at your competitors in whatever industry you're in, and do they have a book? Is it there? And I think you'll find that even though this is a process that we know we can take anybody through and turn them into an author in a month or two and have them produce something really substantial. Like, we know that. I've laid out that whole process and published to sell, but the world hasn't gotten that message yet. So if you're jumping on board now before your competitors, you have a real advantage. And it's not just about, bringing on clients and speaking directly to them. It's also an amazing source for referrals. So an example would be, I gave copies of my book, the real estate book to attorneys and to CPAs and people like that. And so they became aware of my expertise. And when they were asked for a referral, they were much more likely to refer me, because now they perceive me as an expert and as somebody that they can give, that referral to their client and not have to worry that the client is going to be dealing with somebody who doesn't know what they're doing. Because at the end of the day, when a lawyer or a CPA gives a referral, all they want to know is that the client's going to be happy and there's not going to be any egg on their face. And when you have somebody who is a published author and a proven expert in something, that makes them feel comfortable in doing that.
Powerful stuff. Publish to sell, long-term income from short-term effort. Alex, how can people find out more about, what you're doing, find out more about Publish to Sell, and the whole Publish to Sell strategy and principles?
Sure. Well, the book Publish to Sell is available on Amazon and in bookstores. And you can also find information about me and some goodies at publishtosell.com. There's a number of different articles on the site, and we have information about consulting services as well.
All right. Fantastic stuff. And I can tell you that it really is a compelling book. And if you've ever, had that obstacle of thinking, well, do I really have a book in me? Yeah, that's, other people write books. Other people are authors. Accept it. You do know more than you think you know, and you do have it in you, especially when it's spelled out and an actual blueprint is presented of how to actually put this together and organize it. And Publish to Sell is just an incredible resource to get you past those obstacles and to the point where you do have a book that is meant to sell and take you into that land of higher value clients. Alex, I want to thank you for coming on Influencers Radio today. You truly are an influencer. You've influenced a lot of people that have put out books and written books that didn't know that they had it in them. And you've gone beyond that and influenced the people that they've influenced by virtue of them having a book. So thank you for coming on and sharing.
Thank you, Jack. I really appreciate this opportunity, and it's really been a pleasure.
All right. Fantastic. Folks, there you have it. Until next time on Influencers Radio, remember, you are the only real game changer.
You've been listening to Influencers Radio. To get all past shows and updates on future shows, visit influencersradio.com today or follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/influencersradio.